what's been going on at Transparency Life Sciences? What have you been cooking up over there right now?
Well, pleasure to be here again with two tough guys who ask me tough questions. And then they say that I do offend people, but that's okay. So, I'll try not to. I manage to offend somebody always. I'll try not to. So we didn't change our story for the last 5 to 6 years, which is that the clinical research system cannot be reformed. It has to be redone from the beginning. What the difference is today versus 5 years ago or 6 years ago when I first started saying that publicly, or even earlier when I was still at Novartis, is that the audience for that message has changed dramatically. And I think many people now do believe that with all the smart people trying to change the system from within, it just doesn't work. The cost goes up 9–10% year on year. If anybody can give me an example of a trial that recruited on time from their own experience, I'll be thrilled to hear that. And that's based on revised and re-revised and re-revised projections. If anybody can tell me that attrition rate in phase 3 has plateaued, then they're probably looking at different data than I do. So the audience is now receptive to the message that we've been saying from 2010 or 2009 on. The system has to be redone. And we're doing it as a startup company without power and means of big corporation. It's a good thing and bad thing. The good thing is that we can do it because we don't have herds of people who say it's not going to work. The bad thing is that we have to do it obviously stepwise because of bandwidth. So we've de-risked, the whole model is based on transparency, based on open sourcing the ideas, and based on completely removing the middleman. And this is my first offensive statement here. Who is the middleman in clinical trial? It's the CRO and its investigative sites. No objections, thank you. Why are they middlemen? Because if you think about the straightest way that we communicate right now is we grab a digital device, like cell phone or iPhone or whatever, or do Skype and talk to somebody. We don't write letters, and we typically do not do face-to-face meeting unless they're absolutely essential. Now, clinical trial enterprise is still stuck in brick and mortar interactions and writing letters and mailing them, quote unquote, rather than using internet. So, and the middleman who manages that and makes nice profit of that is the CRO industry. The brick and mortar interaction happens in Harvard Medical School hospitals that charge sponsors 60–70% overhead. That is absolutely value destroying from financial perspective, not adding any value. So our goal is to move the trial completely to digital space and outside of investigative sites to either patients' homes, or if brick and mortar interaction is necessary, you go where it's convenient for patients and where it's less expensive, like walk-in clinics or even collecting data via primary care physician that treats these patients anyway. So we are, and I'm happy to tell you where we are in de-risking all those steps.
Now, the first nut that you were working to crack was around this crowdsourcing, right? To try to get insights from others to drive a better protocol. How do you know that you have a better protocol? What were some of the measures or the expectations you had for protocol optimization through crowds?
Well, you know, it's famous in our industry, in clinical research industry, key performance indicators, right, that are, you know, crap in a sense. Because the hard ones that are easy to measure, people are shy to talk about because they're devastatingly bad. Recruiting rates and first patient in, last patient in, quality of data, these are hard measures. And people sort of say, well, so they created a lot of soft measures. In protocol, one of the most important ones is number of amendments, recruitment rate. So it's all intertwined, it's difficult. And we try to put metrics into it. So first crowdsourced protocol that we did a couple of years ago, which is now went to execution or is in execution. It's an investigator-initiated trial. But the crowdsourced metrics were simple. The protocol concocted by a couple of investigators were subject to criticism of a crowd, and then they themselves measured major changes that were introduced to this protocol because of crowdsourcing or open sourcing, and minor changes. And this is published a year ago in Journal of National Cancer Institute. It's a prostate cancer study. And I think there were 4 major changes that were introduced by the crowdsourcing effort, and a bunch of minor changes. So that's one way of measuring it. The other way of measuring it requires time, because you have to actually take this trial into execution and see if you're able to recruit patients easier and faster, because you heard what they had to say before you went into execution, and all other kinds of things that are sort of metricized already by the industry. But I'll give you an example of the one that is actually in the title of this interview. Our most recent example it's a rare disease, so afflicting about probably 5,000–6,000 patients, this segment of the disease that we're targeting in the US. And we have got feedback from 250 patients. So it's a significant proportion of patients who suffer from the disease into the protocol design, about 60 physicians. Both from the US and outside. What happened is, in this case, the protocol is fully digitized in a sense. So it was quite critical for us to ask patients, will they be comfortable by not seeing a healthcare professional that's involved in the study for 12 months. First visit in the site and last visit, but 12 months of video visits and collecting data via pulmonary function tests done with digital and all that. About 1/3 of patients actually told us we're using those devices anyway in managing our disease. There were a couple of self-identified key opinion leaders who said that they've done studies, small studies, one single center in the Netherlands, actually, quote unquote, validating those telemonitoring devices versus legacy system in utilization in clinical trials. These people came to us because they're passionate about it. They don't want money necessarily, they want to be involved in the process. And the final point in terms of making a statement of value of it, this is a new chemical entity in new indication. We had to have a pre-IND meeting with the FDA. So you go to the FDA and you say, hey, here is this trial in patients with significant lung impairment, and we don't want them to be seen by a principal investigator for a year. We'll do video visits and telemonitoring. And you can expect that FDA may shut you down or say, not so fast. This wasn't even a conversation with the FDA. No problem. You actually are probably getting better care of these patients because you will be monitoring them 20%.
And this is a new chemical entity.
This is a
new product
entity.
unapproved.
This is a drug that hasn't been approved. It has reasonably large safety database. It's in phase 3, another indication. But from regulatory perspective, it's a drug that hasn't been approved, doesn't have a label and all that.
How are you doing the safety monitoring for the study?
So, safety monitoring, it's obviously very specific to a disease and even more importantly to a compound. So in broad strokes, you introduce, and I'm not trying to suggest that our model is applicable all across into early stage ADC in cancer. No, it isn't, and it isn't applicable to some others, but 90% of money spent in the US, at least for clinical trials, in chronic diseases. And this model is applicable to those chronic diseases. Maybe not its full iteration, but certainly reducing number of brick and mortar indications. So safety. If you think about it, what we're doing is we're not inventing something. We're just repurposing to some extent stuff that happens in healthcare. If you're a cardiac patient today, if you were hospitalized in a forward-looking institution, you will not be kept in the hospital for a long time. You'll be sent home, and one of those telemonitoring companies, one of them we're working with, AMC Health. I'm still in antibody-drug conjugate zone. AMC Health is doing very well by providing healthcare services for cardiac patients for the most part. So we're simply shifting what they do into and making it on purpose for clinical trials. And there are many others who do it, and there will be more and more. So they're doing it in healthcare services to assure patient safety. We're doing the same. And sky is the limit. You can wire up somebody with now a shirt or a patch that measures vitals 24/7. So you're increasing ability to react to any event that happens for a single patient. You're increasing patient safety, individual patient safety, because you can react quickly. And also because you're collecting data real time, your ability to detect trends is online and real time rather than 6 weeks later when data is downloaded.
Picks up on a lot of themes we were talking about yesterday as well. So 250 plus patients, 60 plus providers, crowdsourcing. What learnings did you get from that were unanticipated? What is the point of the exercise to validate what you already thought, or were you looking for insights that you didn't expect?
Well, I would encourage you actually to read. There's a paper published really a couple of days ago in PLOS Online, so it's free for everybody. And it's well-documented study where they were looking at, this is a bunch of radiologists together with computer scientists. They did an exercise of looking at how is open sourcing of reading radiology image or images better than a single radiology, and results are stunning. And obviously, but the reason is not to convince you that this is the case or not. The reason to look at this paper is to look at methodology of weighting feedback, because there are different ways of doing it. And we're in an early stage of doing that, but clearly you're doing, in this open sourcing exercise, you're doing a couple of things, and that's how our 40 plus, between 30 and 40 challenges protocol builder is structured. Some questions are binary, yes or no, very few. Some are multiple choices, and this is not to create a democratic system. If 60% of patients say that your inclusion criteria should be X, then we go with it, and 20% Y. It's still subject for discussion. But the most important part that we're looking for is ideas outside of the box on endpoints, on ways to measure these endpoints, on statistical analysis plan, and we've had some fantastic feedback that not only can be utilized in this very protocol, but can be incorporated in another protocol in similar setting, in this case, pulmonary disease. And large part of it on patient side is to have their buy-in or test their ability to or willingness to be subject to some really edgy design. And also, I think it gives you a powerful tool in discussion with regulatory agencies and with IRB. Not in this trial, but in other trial, in our multiple sclerosis trial, the IRB in one of prime academic institutions, we gave them results, raw data from Protocol Builder, and to see that it's not something that was invented for corporate reasons, but this is really what patients want to see. Now, in this situation, it sounds 250 plus 60, but multiplied by 30, 40 on average, it gives you 9,000 unique entries. Analyzing that is a lot of work.
Last question. You've really moved the needle in the last few years, especially in this last year. You've made a lot of progress. You're someone who you push the envelope as hard and as far as anybody I know. As you're looking over the next 12 months, standing here a year from now, what are you going after? What do you want to accomplish that's really big, that's at the top of your goal?
Well, if you ask a CEO of a startup company, what are you going after, nine out of 10, and the one that says no will be lying, but 9 out of 10 will tell you we're going after money. We need to scale. We can grow organically, that's fine, and that's slow. But we are at this point right now that we will scale. We're in final stages of acquiring our own 3 new chemical entities from biotech companies that we aim to push the envelope even further because we own these assets. They're not partnered. So there's no one except ethics, legal, and regulatory environment to tell us you can't innovate. And these are in indications that I think we can move to the final stage of our scenario, which is having a trial that will be almost like your remote trial, where patients will never see a healthcare provider or principal investigator. They'll see a healthcare provider, their own GP or their own diabetologist in the case of diabetes. So that's what we're doing. Obviously, 12 months, as you said yourself in previous interview, is a long time in our life, but it's very short time in life cycle of pharma. So we hope we'll get enough money that a year from now I'll tell you what our designs for those 3 indications are and how far we were able to move the needle